We here at EduChemie have helped fulfill dreams of 51 civil service exam UPSC toppers in the year 2020. If you too have the dream to crack this prestigious civil service exam by UPSC, subscribe to our channel and stay up to date for all the information for your UPSC preparation. तैयारी आपकी, जिम्मेदारी हमारी.
Greetings to all of you. My name is Ankit Sharma. I am the instructor of polity at EduChemie. Today we have a video on human rights. This is a concept which is pertinent for the day, and we are going to understand the basic ideas and implications of the concept of human rights. The way we structure this video is very simple. We just ask very simple questions, 4 simple questions as we can call it. Number 1, what is a human? Number 2, what are rights? Number 3, what are human rights, which is a synthesis of human and rights? And number 4, who protects human rights? The idea is that if you're able to answer these questions categorically, step by step, we will cover the depth and the breadth of the understanding, or the preliminary or basic understanding of the concept of human rights. Okay, let's start with the first question. Now, this question, which is what is a human, is a very ancient question. This is a question which has been asked by almost every society. Even anthropologically, the texts confirm that every society had a self-reflective mode in which they started asking the question as it what makes a human being or a man different from the other beings which are surrounded, which are walking the earth, etc. Right? What is basically the difference between a human being and an animal? How is a human being different from an animal, if there is such a difference at all? And the answer has always been one term: mind. Okay, now be mindful that when I use the term mind, it means not only the intellectual or the cognitive capacities, but the entire universe of consciousness, of being able to feel, think, use your emotions, feel emotional about things, sensitivity, sensibility, etc. Okay, so mind is not only a function of the brain, but as it is somehow understood as the essence of humanity itself. Okay, the ability to use feelings and thought processes, right? So that has been one uniform answer, which has been the answer to the question, what is it that that distinguishes human being from let's say other beings which are there on the planet. Okay, and therefore when we have to look at something like human rights, we must first understand what is it that makes us humans in the first place. And the idea is the concept of mind, right? If you look at the implications or the synonyms of the concept of mind, you can have something like consciousness, rationality, judgment, cogitation, conscience, emotional intelligence, decision making abilities. It's just a kind of a synonymization of the concept of mind, which is basically something that we pin down as the essence of a human being. The other thing that we also understand about humans is that all humans are born with the ability to develop the powers of the mind. Okay, it could be one thing to say that not all human beings are born with the same degree or range or quality in which they can exercise their mental powers, but at the same time, it is nonsensical to say that only some human beings are born with an ability to develop the powers of the mind. Okay, all human beings are born with an ability to develop the powers of the mind. Okay, so this is basically if you have to pin down one point, one specific idea as to what makes us humans. Historically, the question has been answered by using the term mind, which includes the feeling and the rational functions of the human. Okay, uh, if you take a look at the quotation by Aristotle, he says very simply, "At his best, man is the noblest of all animals. Separated from law and justice, he is the worst." Right. So when he says "at his best," it implies that what is different between a man and an animal is nobility, or is in a sense the noblest of animals. And what does nobility here mean for Aristotle? It is a form of being which is thinking, right? As it is called thinking being, he used the term for determining the human being. As you know that the term homo sapiens itself means the wise ones, the ones who develop the powers of the mind. Okay, separated from law and justice, he is the worst. What does it imply? This implies that there has to be some conditions, certain circumstances under which the human element of nobility comes into cultivation and force. Okay, and this is the part where we can think about developing an idea of human rights, that at his best man is the noblest of animals, but separated from law and justice, he is the worst, which basically means that there are going to be some elements which are going to be necessary conditions for people to realize the most important potential within themselves. Okay, if you look at the other part of this, this is a familiar diagram to some of you. It is known as the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this basically is a very modern version of what Aristotle said in ancient times, that these are the basic functions or instincts or desires of human beings, and these are the nobler ones as we move up the ladder of development or progress as a species. Okay, so what we have in the the final corners is the physiological needs, safety needs, belongingness and love needs, esteem needs, and self actualization is the one where we are trying to arrive at. Okay, so including creating creative activities, which is basically the usage of the mental powers, the powers of the intellect, the powers of the emotions, and creating and being ingenious with things, etc. Right, that's where all the productivity comes out of. Okay, so this is basically what is described as self fulfillment needs, right? And this is where you can say that a person really becomes a human being. Okay, so having understood the idea of humanity, let's very simply understand the idea of right. What is a right? One thing for certain is that right is not a privilege. What we understand over here is that it is not something which has been granted or has been given out of mercy, out of charity, etc. Right is something which is given to a person as a matter of guarantee. It is something that the person deserves, the person has a claim to, rather than something which is dependent upon the mood or the worldview or the mercy of another person. Okay, so rights are not privileges. Rights are something more fundamental and substantial, which are deserved by the individuals. Okay, and therefore rights are guaranteed. There's a legal maxim in Latin which reads as ubi jas ibi remedium, which implies where there is right, there is remedy, which means to say that there cannot be a right without a remedy or a institution which remedies the breach of that right. For instance, in Article 32, the Supreme Court of India has been called the Constitutional Court, and the article itself has been called the constitutional remedies. Okay, so it basically means that there has to be a coercive and obligatory mechanism under which rights can be enforced and protected, and therefore those are the remedial elements of the right. Okay, and then if we have to just take a very simple look at what are the kind of rights, you can take a look at these three types of rights, a super category of rights as you may call it: the natural rights, the human rights, and the civil rights. Okay, so this is basically what we understand by the two concepts: what is human and what is rights, and from that we can synthesize the idea of human rights. Okay, three simple elements we can understand regarding this. Human rights are inalienable and fundamental. What we understand by inalienable is that they cannot be alienated from the individual. They are not something which are born out of a social or a kind of a societal development. They are something which the human beings are born with. Okay, they are fundamental. This is the first part of human rights. As we have discussed, the concept of human itself is a kind of a basic universal thing, that everyone is born with the ability to reason and feel and have emotions and think and critically analyze, etc. Okay, so these are inalienable and fundamental. Human rights are universal. They are applicable to all humans by the virtue of being born into the human species. Everyone has a claim to human rights, and human rights are basic. What it means to say is that if there is anything like a society or anything like a civility or a civilization, it has to have some basic human rights, which is basically trying to say that if you want to call something a society or a civility or a civilization which has an element of decency, order, respect, dignity, organization, productivity, etc., it has to have some fundamental human rights, which are the meaning of the term basic, right? So these are the three elements that you can understand are the ideas of what a human right is. Now, moving on to the more detailed and factual points about human rights. How did human rights figure out in the modern world? Now, one of the reasons why human right became such a huge issue was because of the gross violations of human rights in the World War II by the Nazis. Okay, so most of our conception, which are derived currently from or which are related to human rights, are derived from our experiences of the World War II. The treaty that established the United Nations gives as one of its purposes, this is the purpose, to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, right? What it implies to say is this, that there was a certain lapse of faith in anything human at all after the atrocities committed by the Nazis. And as you know, United Nations was a body which was born after the World War II. And one of the reasons why United Nations was instituted was to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights. Okay, following up upon this, the General Assembly of United Nations in 1948 adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Okay, this is what makes this date significant, that this was the 10th of December 1948 when Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, and it continues to be the most standard and principal document from which any conception of human right is derived in international law or in context of local understanding of human rights within different countries, right? So this is the principal document that is associated with human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Okay, we don't have the luxury to deal with all the human rights covered under Universal Declaration. There are about 30 of them, but we'll just get the idea of what the first article of UDHR reads. It reads as follows: all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Okay, this is the idea about universality of human rights. They're endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Okay, so the two important terms over here, as we have discussed, are the elements of the mind. Number one is reason, and the other is conscience. It is like the, you know, the proverbial balance or the mixture or the synthesis of the heart and the head, and that is what is the defining element of a human being, and that is what has to be preserved and protected via the method of human rights. Okay, so as we've discussed, that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the principal document, the principal charter, as it were, that lays the basis for modern international human rights law. Okay, so this is basically a detail about how the concept of human right works in the modern world. Okay, if you can look at this picture, this is Eleanor Roosevelt, who was one of the key figures in instituting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that is how it became a moment in itself which has to be celebrated on a day like today. Okay, what are human rights? A very simple question that we can follow up also is that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights lists positive and negative freedoms. Okay, so the idea is that what we have in a Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a set of freedoms. For instance, freedom of movement, which is a positive freedom, which implies that it is something that has been guaranteed positively, that you can move around freely in a territory, in a geography, within territories, within geographies, etc. And then there are kinds of negative freedoms, which are, let's say, freedom from slavery or servitude. Okay, so when you read the declaration, the 30 rights which are given there, they can be classified as negative rights and positive rights. We urge you to take a look at the declaration itself. One thing to remember importantly is that the UDHR is a declaration and not a law. It is something like the directive principles of state policies is in the Constitution of India. They have kind of a moral guiding principle, kind of an insight, but it does not have a necessary element of obligation or coercion. All right. So the last question that we come to is, who protects human rights? Okay, now this can be divided. This answer is a little complicated because yes, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a very, very significant document, but it doesn't necessarily institute a lot of obligatory and coercive mechanisms by which the violation of human rights can be punished, or the human rights of people could be protected. But there are some institutions internationally. For instance, one of them is the European Convention on Human Rights, which establishes a court where the 47 member countries can bring in cases. Okay, so this is one of the examples of an international body, European Convention on Human Rights. The court issues binding decisions that each member state must comply with, right? Here is an instance of binding decisions that if you are a member of this particular institution, you have to comply with the decisions of these institutions. Okay, how does human rights figure out in the Indian context? Okay, so very simply, one can just get an idea that part 3 of the constitution, which is the fundamental rights, and part 4 of the constitution, which is the directive principles and state policies, have the essence and the spirit of the human rights. Okay, if you look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a lot of those rights have the same terminology and essence as are given in the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy. All right, let's read one of them, Article 51C. Now, 51C is basically a directive principle of state policy, which says that the state shall endeavor to foster respect for international law and treaty obligations in the dealings of organized people with one another. Okay, what it implies is that if there is an international law which is based upon the concept of human rights, and there is a treaty obligation which is based upon the concept of human rights, then it is the duty of the state, the government of India. The state includes the parliament and the government, to foster respect and incorporate the elements of human rights in its own laws and respect the human rights as it is governed in international law. Okay, as you know that one of the institution in India which is concerned with human rights is the National Human Rights Commission. Okay, it is an institution which has become active in many cases in supervising, monitoring, and flagging the cases of violation of human rights. Some would argue that it doesn't have many powers at this point of time to do a lot of obligatory or compelling mechanisms to stop the violation of human rights, but nonetheless it is an important body. Okay, then you have the Supreme Court of India, which has in many cases held that the fundamental rights do include human rights. Okay, so for instance, in one of the cases in MC Mehta versus Union of India in 1986, the Supreme Court observed that the right to clean air and environment is a basic human right under the ambit of fundamental rights. So what the Supreme Court said was that Article 21 of the Constitution of India provides life and personal liberty to every person. It should not be taken away without the procedure established by law. And within Article 21 fundamental right, there are other rights which can be called as human rights. So human rights fall under the purview of fundamental rights, which means to say that for some fundamental rights can be interpreted from the construction or the lens of human rights. So this is basically how the Indian Constitution has, you know, found a way to incorporate human rights for all its citizens by the means of its judgments, by the means of institutions, and some provisions in the constitution itself. Okay, so this is the end of the video. I hope you've had some understanding of what we're trying to do here, and if you feel that this has been of some productivity to you, you can like, share, and subscribe. Leave your suggestions and comments on what you think about the continuing discourse of human rights looks like in a country like India at this current juncture. Thank you for your time and patience.